A viewer asked me about converting older non-DCC locomotives, and I'm going to answer his question plus a lot more from you guys. And I mean a lot. Hey everybody, my name is Jimmy. I'm drinking some Kauai coffee. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's really, really good. If you want to tell me what kind of coffee you're drinking and maybe have it featured like these guys right here, you can put that in the comments below. Also, you may notice I'm a little stuffy. It's that time of the year. If you're watching this later on, this is shot in the springtime, and I have lovely allergies right now. So, yay, I'm going to sound funny for this episode, but cheers, guys. Let's get started with a question from Doug Buchanan. He has retired from the military after 33 and a half years and has decided to take up a hobby from his childhood to relax. First of all, thank you for your service and welcome to the world's greatest hobby. So he has gotten into DCC and he's built the system with his cell phone and everything, but the one thing he doesn't understand is how much track can he run. He's looking to do about 75 feet with 2 or 3 locomotives running at the same time. And he's been converting DC locomotives to DCC and was wondering if he's been doing something wrong as they don't have much top end speed. So there's a couple of things here. So first of all, it really doesn't matter on the track length. Just think of it as you're completing a circuit. The real thing that matters is how many locomotives you are running. Just take it as a good rule of thumb that non-sound DCC locomotives use about half an amp of power, and sound DCC locomotives use about an amp of power. So what you're looking at is with a DCC EX system without any boosters, you're looking to be able to provide a max of 2 amps. So you may need to consider putting in a booster. I'm working on a video on that as we speak. I've got the parts in, and I'm going to be talking about that in a little while. But yes, so the track length really doesn't matter. It's how many locomotives you are running. And for your other question where the top speed isn't as much, if you're converting older locomotives, those motors tend to be more power hungry, so you're not going to get as much speed out of it. And you also may need to go into the CVs to adjust the speed and see what it's like and just kind of mess with that, whether it's the start mid high settings, the 3-speed settings, or the full speed table in JMRI. And I've done a video on that as well, and I'll link that at the end of this video. Hope this helps. David Helper asked if I've ever tried 3D printing rolling stock. Well, the answer is yes, I have dabbled a little bit in it, but I've also been more focused on buildings and details. But that being said, I am trying to design some, and I'm going through a very solid process of just doing 3D printing and doing tests and really getting the shapes down before I go into the details of it so that I don't to put too much work in it. So I'm starting off with the simplest form, which is a box car. I've done some tank car designs and some hopper car designs and things like that. But overall, I don't really run on the layout because of a few different reasons, but I am kind of messing with 3D printing rolling stock. Art Layton says that he's just starting his setup and his base is either going to be plywood or MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. What are my thoughts on MDF? I personally love MDF. I think it's a great building material. One thing is just you have to build with it just like it's regular plywood. So you can't just put it on top without any support. Just make sure you have those support cross beams and things like that. I would go a little bit thicker on the base. I wouldn't use the 1/4-inch MDF. I'd definitely go more towards at least the 1/2-inch MDF. But overall, I think you can go with either one. I'm actually considering using OSB for the base of one of mine. So really the base, as long as you have solid construction and you've done everything right and you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's with it, you're going to be okay. NSN Scalar actually has 2 questions for me, and he asks, what is your favorite website to purchase trains that isn't eBay? And what is your favorite part about building a layout? So the first one, I will go with my new trains and then my used trains. So new trains, most of the time when I'm buying offline, I will buy from Train World, usually the first place that I go to. And then I'll also look at like Lombard Hobby, Yankee Dabbler, Tony's Train Exchange, Midwest Model Railroader. There's a lot of them out there. I think Train Life is one. There's a lot of good train stores out there, but I usually start at Train World because they're usually either the lowest or right at the industry average for what the prices are going to be. So if I'm going to find a good price on a train, at Train World is typically where I'm going to find it. In terms of used trains, and it's not eBay, I will look at trains with a Z.com. I've ordered a lot from them and I've never been disappointed, and they have a wide selection of older used locomotives. If you're looking to buy some old Athearn Blue Box, great place to look. And for your second question, what is your favorite part about building a layout? Well, I really have two. One is when you get the track laid down and you're able to run your trains for the first time. That's like a really magical moment. The second is when you just start to do scenery and you do the basics, and the layout really goes from like just being this monstrosity of plywood to actually starting to look like a layout. So those are my two favorite parts of building a layout. Wolfgarten asks if I think that things like Loco-Fi and Bluenami are the future or a flash in the pan. Well, I do think they are the future. I think that they add another factor that simplifies running model trains, especially DCC model trains, and that's just the fact that at some point all you're going to have to do is connect a constant power supply to the track and then turn on your phone or whatever controller and be able to control locomotives. That's the big benefit of systems like Loco-Fi and Bluenami, is that you don't really, Bluenami is the one that I've tested the most with, and you don't need a DCC system to run these and get all the features out of it and control them individually. You just need a constant power supply to the track and it'll work. So I do think that this is the future. I think it's going to be, for a while, it's going to be the top tier premium option, but it's probably going to propagate down. So at some point, someone's going to make a decoder that is inexpensive. It's going to be non-sound and it's going to be Bluetooth. So that's what's going to happen at some point. But for now, I think it's going to be just the top tier. It's going to be the premium option, but I do think it's here to stay. Aksham Tuteja asks if he has a DCC EX system and how do I add boosters to it. A lot of you guys are asking about boosters, so I'm really glad I'm doing that tutorial here. But basically, you wire boosters in between the DCC system and the track itself. So you put it somewhere along the power bus. I'm going to do a whole video on this, but that's basically where you put it. So because the booster is essentially boosting that signal from the DCC base station. So just putting it right there in between the base station and the track is where you're going to go and have it along that bus line. Clarinet Boy 82 asks a question that I think that a lot of people ask, and I actually get asked this a lot. And he says, what would be the easiest DCC to get that requires no programming? I don't do computer programming and I don't get along with cell apps. Or is the best option for me to stick with traditional DC? Also, if I stick with DC, will DCC trains still perform basic running operations on DC? Well, if you're looking for a very basic system to control your DCC system, the most basic I can think of is the Bachmann Easy command. It involves little to no programming whatsoever. It's very basic, non-computer programming. You just push a couple buttons and you assign it to a number. So Bachmann Easy command is really the easiest way to run a DCC system, and I think they still sell a booster. I can't remember. So if you need to upgrade it or expand it, you have options like that as well. And if you want to do something a bit more complicated, you may want to consider sticking with DC, because one thing with DCC is it allows for a lot of things, which is why it's complex. It allows for custom consisting. It allows for controlling and customizing all of these different features on a locomotive, lighting, sound, all of these different things, which is why it can be very complex. So, and for your last question, DCC trains will perform on a DC setup. If they don't for some reason, if you can put them onto JMRI, which I know you're not asking about, but there's an option where it says they can run on DC as well right when you start programming them. So I hope that answered your question, but in terms of your question, either the Bachmann Easy command system or just sticking with DC is going to be your best option. N6NVR asks, he says, do we know who started this less than thrilling habit of starting videos with a drink of coffee or other innocuous beverage? It happens on several posters I'm subscribed to, and it's been several years. Well, I'm not going to go into details into why I decided to start doing it on this video, but I am planning to do a video going into a deep dive in the behind the scenes of how I run and handle my YouTube channel and making that a patron exclusive video. So if you want to know why I do coffee, you can wait for that video. You can become a patron if you're not already, and that video will be out in the next month. So I can tell you why I'm doing it, but there's a lot of different reasons for doing it, and they make sense once they're explained to you. Waza33 Racer asks, what is the average speed of a swallow? Well, that depends. Is it an African or a European swallow? Earl Freeman asks, do you think the NMRA should start working on a standard for Bluetooth decoders and apps, since Bluetooth decoders like Bluenami won't be recognized by apps like Hornby HM7000, and probably the other way around as well? Well, I probably bet someone is working on a standard like that, but also these decoders do work just fine with regular DCC, so they really are handled by that standard, and the Bluetooth is kind of an additional feature of it, so they do match one standard right now, but if they go to pure Bluetooth and don't have regular DCC functionality, they're definitely going to need some standards set by the NMRA. Majoba says that they have non-DCC locomotives that are older, and he wants to find a way to make them DCC with some kind of kit. And he also asks me what's my thoughts on this, and have I converted old stuff to run DCC, and which brand is better. Now, I'm an N-scaler, so I can really only speak mostly to N-scale. I've done some HO scale conversions, but mostly N-scale right now. So, first of all, I actually looked a little bit for it, and I didn't really find a kit per se. Maybe a good idea for a manufacturer to make one of those. That'd be pretty cool. But DCC decoders are actually kind of simple to put in. The NMRA does have standards for their wiring and everything. You just have to be able to do a little bit of soldering. So the closest thing to kits are really going to be adapters that you can solder to it. Now for me, I have used Next 18 adapters, which comes from Soundtracks, and basically it's a little adapter board that you can click a Next 18 decoder into, and it already has the wire soldered to it, and you just solder those connections. So it essentially converts a non-DCC locomotive to a DCC ready locomotive. I did that with my Alco diesel, and it's working great. It's phenomenal. So that's the closest you're going to find right now to a kit. And luckily, every decoder that I have used has really solid instructions on where to connect wires. The next question you asked was, do I have any thoughts on converting old stuff to run with DCC? And I've actually done quite a bit of this recently with N-scale, so I've got quite a few thoughts on this. The first is, the most important thing that's going to be different is the amount of power that the locomotive draws, and that is going to be really higher with older locomotives. The older motors take more power, so you're going to probably want to look at decoders that usually they have like a running amp and then a max amp, and I tend to, when I'm converting older ones, I'll buy decoders that have a higher max amperage. So a lot of times you'll see them where it's like 1 amp and then 1.5 amp max, but you'll see like also like 2 amp max, and I'll buy those 2 amp max ones just to put in there. Another thing that you can do with this is there are repower kits out there, which are basically putting modern motors that will fit into older locomotives, and this is less power draw and they run a lot smoother. Another thing you'll find with these is a lot of times the older locomotives, especially the lower end ones, they won't have things like flywheels which allow for smoother operation. So you can find flywheels on eBay just with a quick search, but a lot of times you won't find things like that that make modern locomotives run a lot smoother than their old ones, so you may find that they're a little bit more herky-jerky. For the brands, I have converted several N-scale and a couple HO scale locomotives to DCC that are old, non-DCC ready locomotives. In terms of N-scale, the easiest one I've converted is a Concord. Concords are great. They still look phenomenal, and they were extremely easy to convert. That RDC that you saw in my last video, that is a Concord RDC, and that was just the easiest conversion I've done of a locomotive. I actually swapped the motor out on it, and it was super easy. So another really easy one to do is lifelike. Those are, you have to make some room for the decoders, and it's a bit hard to put the sound in them if you want to do that, but lifelike diesels are super easy to convert as well. In terms of HO scale, Athearn Blue Box are really easy to convert. I've got one of those, and that's a video coming up this year of me converting an Athearn Blue Box locomotive. You may have to repower them and put a new motor in them. There are kits available, and I'll put a link if I can find some. But that's a really good one to convert. I've converted Bachmans. Older Bachmans, they convert pretty easily, but they're also a bit herky-jerky when you try to power them, so you may have to do some motor swapping as well. So in terms of my easiest brands to convert to DCC, for N-Scale, it's definitely Concord and Lifelike, and the one that I've had the easiest time converting in HO scale is Athearn Blue Box. That was a lot of questions, but I enjoy answering you guys' questions. It's kind of fun for me. So if you have any questions that you want answered, you can put that in the comments below, and I'll get them to him in next month's Q&A. Thank you all so much for watching. It means the world to me. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.